Hello friends, welcome to Spellbinders Large Die of the Month for August. This is super cute, a very large die set this is, and you can create several different kinds of vignettes. But when I looked at these, what came to mind was you have this cute little bag and these three dies to create a goldfish. So a goldfish in a bag ready to bring home. And then there are several other elements that I'll use in a second card to create an underwater scene. I'm going to start by creating the bag for the goldfish. So there are these two dies, and I have cut white cardstock with this one. And then I put these two together and used a little bit of low-tack tape just to hold them on the back so that they would be even to cut foam. And then again, I used just this die alone for vellum. I am going to be creating a little shaker for our goldfish to sit on. So the first thing that I'm going to do is add some adhesive. Use regular glue, but because I might need to do a little bit of fiddling around with the border, I am going to use Tombow, and I will let it dry completely until it is tacky. And when it is tacky, it is repositionable. So this shouldn't be too difficult to put together, she says. We'll see. It won't be, pretty sure. Okay, so there's the adhesive for that. And then this is going to sit on top. So I am going to have to do this in two different steps because I will be putting Tombow on the other side of this foam die cut, but obviously I can't do that now. So I'm actually going to take it. It's on pretty thick in some places, which of course will extend the drying time. So I'm just going to tap some of that adhesive off so that it has a thin layer and it will dry more quickly. This is the bottom of the bag. And I am going to go ahead and adhere the bag. There is an etched line to indicate where the bag sits on this die cut. So I'm just going to use regular adhesive. Might as well do something while the Tombow adhesive is drying. Just line that up with the etch line. There we go. Set that aside. And I'm going to go ahead and put the goldfish together. I have used 3 different colors of cardstock for this fish. Base of his body is out of Bellini. The layering portion is out of chiffon, and then the little additional fin is out of blush. I've just cut a little square of black cardstock to pop behind the die cut opening for the eye. So now we'll adhere the layer onto this fin. You can see is etched, and its counterpart on this die cut is not. So that is a good place to start lining up this die cut. And then we have another etched line on the body. So we'll add just a little bit of adhesive onto that. And then add on die cut, and I just need to push that up a bit. There we go. This is good to go. And I'm just deciding where I'm going to start. I think I'll start at the bottom, and I'm lining it up not with the bottom of the bag, but that curved line. So I'll just start on one end. There we go. Oh, I thought it was going to go on easily. And I'm just going to put the top in place. Now I can go back and just push the sides in. Okay, could pop that in just to get it nice and smooth. There we go. Before I add the shaker material, I am going to go ahead and get the adhesive onto the top of this foam die cut now. And I will do the same thing again. Top off the adhesive, which kind of evens it out and spreads it a little bit. I did get a little bit on the background, but I'll take care of that when it's dry. I am going to create a shaped card using the Perfect Touch arches. I've cut oceanside cardstock, which is gorgeous shade of blue. I love it. Then I will use the next size up to create the card base. So you can see it's going to leave just a little bit of a border. I have a piece of 8.5 by 11 sheet of cardstock, which I have folded in half. And then I will die cut it with the die at the top, just overhanging it, and that is going to create the hinge. The card base will be misshapen at the top of the arch, so I will cut an additional panel to adhere to this card base. There's the card base, and this panel will be adhered on top so that we have a nicely shaped arch. So line that up on the bottom, and then make sure the sides are aligned. There's our card base. And then this panel is going to be centered like so. I think I've been using this Perfect Touch Arches die set quite a bit. I just love it. I love the shape of the arches, and I love the pretty little edging. Let's see if this is... Okay. Use my adhesive eraser and pick up this fine residue that is left. I can just use my finger and roll it, and that's good. Just going to add in some clear iridescent confetti for the shaker material. Just flatten it out a little bit. Now we're ready to adhere There we go. It really looks like bubbles. That's so cute. Okay. Just a little bit of stickiness. So I'm just going to use some anti-static powder and just run it on the, that's better. Perfect. And go ahead and adhere the bag onto the card front. Little bit of glue residue that somehow managed to get on this die cut for the bottom of the bag. So because it's Tombow, it just kind of rolls up and comes off. I am going to place a tie on the bag, and it has 2 layers to it. So I'm going to have the sentiment adhered to. I'm just going to cut this down a little bit. Just make that a little bit smaller so that it will fit onto the tie. So I'm going to adhere that on first. There I've got it at the angle that I want it. Okay. And then we'll put the little layered knot on top. So I am going to have the bow sitting flat against the vellum die cut, but I want the little tag that is going on it to be popped up. So I'll start off by adding in some foam squares. Some Tombow just to the knot of the bow. Give that a few minutes to dry. And I'm also going to pop up the goldfish. On goes the goldfish. I have these smooth, clear crystals, and I can't resist using them. I'm just going to add 3 because I'm using just a touch of liquid adhesive. I know vellum, which was why I used the Tombow, vellum does not like liquid, but I'm using just the smallest dot is really all that is needed to hold these crystals. There we go. And that just finishes it off. There we go. What a fun little shaker. So now let's move on to card 2. Okay, I have everything die cut from a combination of blush, dahlia, Bellini, and chiffon. We're adding a little bit of Distress Oxide ink, abandoned coral, and Hero Arts unicorn white. So I'll start with the oyster shell. And I'm just adding the color using a detail blending brush to the base just to give it some dimension. There's an etched line to line that up, but the first thing I'm going to do is add in the pearl. So that was die cut from chiffon. So I'm just going to add a little bit of white ink to the top of it. A little dot of glue. And when I have die cuts that are overlapping another die cut, I just add the adhesive right along the bottom so that it can pop up a bit. On this seaweed, I'm just going to add in a little bit of white ink highlights on the top. This one I'm going to add the abandoned coral just down the center on the stem. Just bring it up a little bit onto the leaves. And then we have these 3 flowers, and I am also going to add abandoned coral to the base. And then there's a little etched circle in the middle of the flowers. So I'll add the floral centers out of this dahlia cardstock. And these are rocks. Just add some little bit of ink on the base of them. Let's put the little castle together. So I'm going to darken this area right at the bottom. And then the little arch on this turret can be framed out. Now for the cute little mermaid. The first thing I'm going to do is pop her hair on. She is so cute. And of course there are etched lines that make lining it up super easy. And then I'm going to pop the little stars in her hair. So I'm just looking for the long point to get this lined up because they're not symmetrical. So there we go. Add some cheeks in. Next, we'll put her seashell top on. So cute. Her body, there is an etched line. The top edge of her tail will line up with that line. So I'm going to add my adhesive here. And there's some trim to match her top. And I'm just going to add a little bit of the abandoned coral just on the base of her tail. And a little bit of white on the end of her tail. And that is sufficient. That is everything put together. Now to work on the background. This is an A2 size, 4¼ inches by 5½ inches of oceanside cardstock. And I am going to try to create some light rays. So I'm just going to mark the middle of this panel. I'm going to be adding in some white pigment ink. There. Clean sponges on hand, so I'll just attach that. And I'm just going to just run it over the surface. Add some spatter to the panel using a fan brush. I'm going to have to give this a few minutes to dry. The background on first. Onto this A2 size top folding card base. I'll line it up at the crease. Cut just a couple of more pieces of seaweed. So I'll just add a little bit of white pigment ink on the top just to give it some highlights. I'm going to overlap 3 rocks to create a grouping. Well, I'm going to have the oyster right at the center, at the bottom of the panel. And so all of my seaweed is going to branch out from behind it. There we go. I'm going to pop up the oyster with foam squares out of the larger ones to make do with these little ones. And I'm going to tuck the turret in slightly behind the oyster shell. These rocks are adhered to the frames, popping up a bit, so I just want to stabilize that with a foam square. Next, we'll place this gorgeous girl. Just decide where I want that sentiment, probably in the center. Okay, so I'm going to pop her up with 100 million little foam squares. There we go. Attach half of this smaller seaweed to the oyster, and then just there. Some little flowers that I'm going to place so that they're trailing the mermaid. And I have borrowed some fish from Small Die of the Month, which is another adorable set. But I have these 2 stars which I want to use. So I'm going to place them on the door. My letters did not die cut completely, which is going to be noticeable because it's sitting against that dark background. So I'm going to pop it back in the die, and I'll add a shim on top, just a scrap piece of cardstock, and run it through the die cutter again. Okay, that is better. I can add on my sentiment. Just add in some of this confetti into the background just to add a touch of shine. And a friend of mine does a lot of those. I think they're called diamond. I'm not sure. Anyways, when she's finished a project, she gives me her, oh, it's perfect size. Okay. So now she was color sorting them for me, if you can believe it. And I told her, no, don't waste your time doing that. Now I'm thinking, I wish she, I wish she did, because now here I am. Okay, 1, 2, I'm looking for the clear ones. I really love the clubs this month. I mean, I love them every month, but I love anything that is water or sea themed. I grew up by the ocean and spent my childhood on the west coast of Canada, on Vancouver Island. If you ever plan a trip to Canada, add that to your list. Of course, Victoria, the capital, is beautiful, but the treasure of the island is found in the rainforest going up north. And I also spent just a few years of my childhood on the East Coast in Newfoundland, which is gorgeous. I just topped up the iridescent confetti with Nouveau Crystal Drops Morning Dew. And I am also going to add a little bit of Nouveau Glitter Drops White Blizzard, which is another favorite of mine, just to those stars in her hair and the stars on the turret door. I will also get the black Nouveau drops out, so this is always a little less forgiving if you mess up. So I like to, there, and you see the bottle burps, so I'm glad that This is why I do this, and I just want to practice getting a tiny little so I'm barely touching. I feel it's a bit too tiny. There, that one could be just a little bit bigger. And then I'll finish up by going back to the glitter drops and adding that to the pearl. The glitter drops will dry clear and it is very sparkly. It looks gorgeous. That completes our second card, the sweet underwater scene. It's the first one, which is that cute little shaker. So there we go, friends, two very different cards featuring Spellbinders Large Die of the Month Splash Tails. This is really a fabulous die set. I hope you enjoyed this video, and as always, I appreciate your visit. Stay tuned for the upcoming video tutorial for the small die of the month.